The Bank of Canada beginning to signal that it's getting towards the end of its rate hiking cycle. And I think this is something that the market is going to want to pay attention to. Is this an early indicator as to where other central banks potentially could be going? The Fed, Bank of England, etc. So the Bank of England has raised by 25 basis points, and that's pretty much in line with expectations. But here's the twist. The Bank of Canada now expects to hold rates while it assesses the impact that the hikes that it's delivered thus far are having. The Canadian currency, the loonie, erasing gains after this policy rate decision. This is I guess you could call it a hawkish hike, but with a dovish message. Maybe it's just an inline hike. But nevertheless, I think a lot of people are going to be looking at this and saying, is this what we get next from the Fed?
Yeah. Well, also, when they're still looking at their average inflation forecast for this year, it's still in the threes. It's still going to be 3.6%. So they're not done with the inflation story. And then you take a look at what happened in Australia. You can see inflation can accelerate, something we learned overnight.
Well, I think that is what these central banks are going to be looking for.
Yeah.
And they're going to try and work out, because they've got a lot in train, what impact is it going to have? This long and variable lags thing, I think, is being called into question right now.
Yeah, let's get more on this. Bloomberg's Michael McKee joins us to break down the numbers. All right, what do you make from this? How does it set up the Fed for next week, Mike?
I don't think it really has an impact on the Fed. Their situations are similar but somewhat different. In Canada, they have had a major collapse in home prices because a lot of Canadians have adjustable rate mortgages. And so the higher the Bank of Canada goes, the more it hurts the housing industry there. And that's one major difference from the U.S. The inflation rate has really dropped in recent months, specifically the headline number, but even the core starting to come down, and you can see where they are with the headline target rate. And so they can take a pause, but that, as they make very clear, is not a certainty that this is the end. They just want to make sure they see what happens to the economy afterwards. The Fed doesn't have the real estate situation, but they do want to see what's happening with the economy.
But this is the narrative, isn't it, that all central banks are grappling with at the moment, Mike, is that they've done a lot and they've done it relatively quickly, and they don't know whether the impact of that policy shift is being affected now, how much more is still to come. And this is the real challenge, I think, for the Fed. We're now in calibration mode, and that's the difficult bit. It's the finessing bit that is going to be the real challenge.
Yeah, it's the old question of how long are the long and variable lags. Fed officials have said they're expecting the full force of what they've done so far to only start hitting the economy this spring. So it is a possibility that they have already over-tightened. They don't think so, but that's why you get these arguments on Wall Street about what they should be doing.